Durag Wisdom here, folks, and welcome to Y2K 18.06.14 with just 145 days left until the midterms. Bill Maher calls it a slow-moving coup. Amy Siskin, author of The List, says that totalitarianism, once it is planted, will bloom fully and soon replace every plant on this earth. And this, by the way, is a paraphrase of my understanding of what she's trying to teach. We made a tragic mistake when most of us did not vote in the Y2K16 presidential election, when we planted those seeds. In the nuclear war drama Threads, one of the characters says that we should not worry about a nuclear war because we can't do anything about it anyway. Then he adds that he wants to be drunk and strapped under the bomb when it drops. Later in the film, he soon regrets that clueless statement. We should never, ever get to a point when we feel we can't do anything about anything. When evil strikes, when disease strikes, we must not be complacently helpless. We must at all times act for the good of our country and for our lives. When Traitor Trump was elected, we irresponsibly invited the Count Dracula of totalitarianism into our lives. And he will not leave unless we stand together and act. Amy Siskin and Rachel Maddow, among others, says that we must always pay attention not to what they say, but to what they do. And at this moment, the Traitor Trump wheels of totalitarianism are grinding on. This month, for example, the tainted Supreme Court is going to decide the Janus case, which is really a resurrection of the Friedrichs case. A scab named Janus is being backed by anti-union and anti-worker conservatives similar to the fanatics who head the so-called Freedom Caucus. Scab Janus does not want to pay union dues, and yet he wants all the benefits of a union thereof. If he wins his case, which the pundits are saying he will, unions will have a much more difficult time raising money that work to fight for rank and file rights. But now that empty Supreme Court seat was stolen by Bix McDumbbell through their nomination of right-wing extremist Part 2 in the name of Neil Gorsuch, Scab Friedrichs has been resurrected through Scab Janus. And this time the fascists will succeed in hamstringing unions for good. In the totalitarian future United States, workers will no longer have unions, nor the right to collective or individual bargaining. As workers were in the Gilded Age of the late 19th century, they will be again abused and exploited and even murdered by the rich, greedy scum of that future time coming soon to this theater. Meanwhile, major corporations like Verizon, Comcast, Sinclair, and others are trying to consolidate our media under fewer and fewer banners. Comcast already owns MSNBC, NBC, and Universal. Now they want to own 21st Century Fox as well. In the Trump totalitarian future USA, there will be only one TV station and only one opinion. There will no longer be an open, free, and diverse media. And let's not forget that net neutrality is now dead, murdered by Traitor Trump and his swamp. This will allow major corporate players to mess with our open and free internet, privatizing it for all time. We do not want a media controlled by a few greedy, rich scum. Totalitarians and Nazis love to separate families that they oppress and eventually imprison and then murder. Traitor Trump and his evil party have begun the process and are now separating families who come to our borders fleeing their own dangerous persecution for the safety of the USA. Instead, they're coming and they get chains and handcuffs. Children and even infants are being taken away from their parents at the Mexican border and being sent to be warehoused in massive empty big box stores for perhaps months. The damage being done to these innocent children is widespread, and they will be traumatized for the rest of their lives because of this evil policy. The traitor Trump totalitarian USA of our future will routinely separate parents from their children, and will also include in this separating children from anti-Trump liberals who will be placed in concentration and labor camps and maybe even killed. Traitor Trump has just returned from North Korea with nothing but praise for the most brutal dictator on our planet. The creep stood there in front of the American people claiming how much Kim the Thug loves his people and how much they love him in return. This about a creep who routinely punishes his people with starvation, torture, murder, forced abortions, and religious persecution, especially against Christians. The fascist accidental president of the USA just loves dictators and despises our democratic allies. To maintain our democratic republic, folks, and grow toward a more pure form of democracy, we need to maintain our important constitutional law of checks and balances. The GOP of this era have lost their way, and their Congress, which is supposed to have co-equal powers with the executive branch, have given up their right to check the president or the judicial branch whenever they threaten the rule of law. The idea that a president can abuse the tariff laws, for example, as Trump is doing, is the fault of a Congress that is not checking him. I intend to vote Democratic this November, if only to maintain the important checks we need in place, especially to control a runaway fascist, traitorous president who is leading our country down a path we may never recover from. We should never feel helpless. We have to read, we have to write, we have to protest. We have to stand and protect our country from Trump, Putin, their GOP, and from totalitarians everywhere. If we decide to be complacent with the mantra that there is nothing we can do about it, we will lose this November's election. We will also lose the Y2K20 election, and with it, our country. I have no doubt about this unless we wake up and act.